Ben Calkins. I'm the co-founder of the Center for Free Enterprise. We started it 11 years ago, David Brown and I, with the idea of bringing people, ideas, and capital together. I always hate to interrupt the networking because it's wonderful. We could almost have a meeting and just network for 90 minutes, and that might be a great idea, and it would save us a lot of trouble on the programming side. So, in any event, thanks for coming. I would like to acknowledge our sponsors. Wyndham over here, Volkey, he's our videographer. Carrie Malott and Westfield Bank, but it's not Westfield anymore, so my apologies. First Financial, they're a sponsor. And my law firm, Calkins Law Firm, which is a business law boutique in Chagrin Falls, is a sponsor as well. So please support our sponsors and feel free to inquire about sponsorship opportunities. We have as our guest moderator, and we're going to try to do this a little bit more often going forward, Jill Arena and her of Arena Enterprises and her cast of experts on getting a business ready to sell. Okay, welcome, Jill.
Thanks, Ben. And let's thank Ben for all the years with the Center for Free Enterprise and all that he does. And he is an amazing M&A lawyer. We got a deal in the end zone together last year, and the woman said, you know, she had hired somebody like from, I don't know, somebody, and she paid them $40,000 or $50,000, and they had no buyer for her business. And Ben and I came along, I had the buyer and he had the sell side services. So it was a great team, and thanks, Ben. So today we're going to talk about exit planning, and we all came to exit planning differently, but we all knew it was important. We'll start with introductions with the esteemed panel. Tom Furness, Managing Partner with Growth Strategies Group. Tom's experience is in business performance optimization, turnarounds, restructuring, business transition, exit planning, and M&A transaction advisory. So long history helping companies with financial health, operational efficiency, digital business transformation, and growth. So important these days, and decided to hang out a shingle on his own, so we're excited for you. The new company is called Growth Strategies Group, helping a diverse array of industries, manufacturing, business services, distribution, and MBA Weatherhead resides in Ohio. So did I do that justice?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, awesome.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Jordan Rodriguez, Certified Exit Planning Advisor. You'll hear us talk about this term CEPA a lot today. Many of us are certified under Walking to Destiny, Christopher Snyder's group, but Certified Exit Planning Advisor and founder of the Chagrin Valley Business Strategies Company. Jordan, forming Chagrin Valley Business Strategies Company was really in response to thinking thoughtfully and differently about his clients' needs, his wealth management clients. He said, I want to transform the financial services industry, and I want to stay ahead of those trends to help individuals, families, and the related businesses get a superior experience and a better outcome. I think that was really forward thinking. The goal was to be someone who would help focus an owner on closing their wealth gap by maximizing the value in their business. That is a big deal, not just helping them pick a stock or a mutual fund. So he launches 2024 Chagrin Valley Business Strategies. He was with Wernick Spear Wealth Managers and decided, I'm a financial planner, but I need to help business owners unlock all the value in their business and have a stronger liquidity event. So with a team now at Chagrin Valley Business Strategies, he helps owners with their mission to have a liquidity event, exit strong. But between Chagrin Valley Business Strategies and Wernick Wealth Management, it's now a true end-to-end wealth management solution for business owners and their families. And I love, Jordan, I'll spend another second on this, long gone are the days when we just advise, which mutual fund to pick. We're really seeing, you see yourself as an extension of the client's business and a trusted resource for all that they do. So thanks for all your help, or all your work in that area, because that is a big, big thing. Jordan holds FINRA Series 7 and 66 registrations, as well as life, health, and disability insurance licenses in Ohio, also a certified financial planner and a SEPA. So welcome, Jordan.
Thanks for having me.
Gary Burden, Gary was serving our country and fighting for our freedom. Thank you for your service. After working with financial planning firms, Gary joined the Ohio Valley Business Advisors Association to help family-owned businesses maximize their outcomes through a thoughtful and strong exit. You help your clients with market analysis, strategic positioning, and network-driven introductions that would open new doors for them to increase valuation and meet all their goals. Gary then worked for OVBA, but then acquired it in 2022. Congrats on that. Experiencing firsthand the realities of buying a business and doing, walking your talk, doing what you helped so many others do. So in a couple things, you've helped business owners successfully exit and watched several former buyers resell their company again, and some over 3 times what they once paid. So thanks for that. And oh, by the way, Gary is a CFP, Certified Financial Planner. He's a Certified Exit Planning Advisor, and he has a Bachelor of Science in Engineering and was with the United States Military Academy at West Point and an Airborne Ranger.
Wow.
Too bad you're not that accomplished. Too bad you didn't do too much in your life there. So you guys, I'm very excited today. If you think about it, and my name is Jill Arena. I own a company called Arena Enterprises. We help businesses buy businesses, find and buy businesses. 3 types of buyers we help. We'll help a strategic find a company to acquire for very strategic reasons. They want to move into a new area for revenue generation or stop outsourcing or go into a new geography. We help individual buyers find and buy their first company. So we're not curing cancer, but we're changing lives. We're helping that individual buyer buy their first company and become an entrepreneur through acquisition. And we're helping private equity with platforms and add-ons. I decided to get involved in exit planning because if I showed my buyer 4 or 5 companies to acquire and they only bought one, those leftover sellers would say, why didn't that buyer buy me? What's wrong? And then I sometimes have to break the news that you would need to make some changes at your company to unlock all the value. You're just not exit ready. So I thought, well, how am I gonna help these companies become exit ready? And that's when I became a certified exit planning advisor through Chris Snyder's SEPA program. So I'm buy side. Gary is sell side, right? Lower middle market and Main Street businesses. Jordan is wealth planning, and he found his way to exit planning because they're clearly related. And Tom found his way to exit planning because there are so many businesses who need to increase profitability to unlock all their value. Before they sell, they're going to need to increase profitability, decrease operating expenses, and they'll have a better outcome. So we all found our way to exit planning that way. So today's panel is a little bit from each of us. I think we're going to start out, we promise we're going to give you actionable items with respect to whatever you're working on. But our goal is to give you actionable insights into how we feel about exit planning, what it is, and how to get it done correctly. But let's start with exit planning and what is SEPA. Jordan, do you want to take that one? What is SEPA? What is certified exit planning? Start out.
Sure.
Here.
Okay. Everybody hear me okay? So SEPA, the Certified Exit Planning Advisor. It's actually a Cleveland company, which is really cool. It's a framework, is how I think of it. It's kind of similar to CFP, if anybody in here has their CFP. Originally, I thought if you get this licensure, you have the letters after your name, suddenly the queue fills up. Everybody wants to work with you because you're the smartest person in the room. It's not the case. It does make you smarter, but it's a way to think about exit planning. And in my case, it's a way to think about exit planning for business owners who I'm working with in a financial planning capacity. It's really important because if I call myself a wealth manager and 80% of somebody's wealth is in this business that I'm not, I might say, hey, how's business going? That's not business planning. We need to understand what the business is worth. We need to understand the growth values, the growth detractors. We need to understand the tax implications, the estate planning implications, everything. Chicken and egg situation with me, I found myself working with a lot of business owners, and I think they really liked me and they liked a lot of what we were doing on the wealth planning side. But candidly, they would say, what's really important to me is understanding, how this business is going to transform my future. And we're doing our fancy discounting of cash flows, Monte Carlo analysis, and it's based on assumptions. It's, what do you have now? What are the growth rates we're tacking onto it? And again, 80%, that pie chart, it's this big red blob, and we're kind of using a stale valuation number. Maybe their CPA said use book value if you want to talk about what your business is worth. They said, Jordan, we need to start doing more. We need to understand how this fits into the broader picture. And that's how Sugar and Valley Business Strategies was born. Kind of born out of necessity, but it was a blessing in disguise. We had to spin it out for compliance reasons. I wish it was all under one umbrella. It'd be a lot easier to explain. But a long-winded way of saying the SEPA is a framework for understanding how exit planning works through the eyes of the business owner themselves instead of through the eyes of the professional advisor as we all view it.
That's awesome, thanks. And so 3 legs of a stool were taught in SEPA, and you're not going to sell your business unless the owner is personally ready. I had an owner say to me, I am not going to watch Entertainment Tonight with my wife every night. And I said, then you shouldn't sell your business right now. And I'm not kidding, the exact words. So 3 legs of the stool. The owner has to be personally ready. Well, what are you going to do when you sell your business? Especially if a lot of self-esteem is wrapped up in your business. Then 2nd leg of the stool, you have to be personally financially ready. Okay? 3rd leg of the stool, the business has to be exit ready. So, Gary, I know you're a SEPA too. Can you speak to what they mean when someone says exit planning is just good business strategy and the 3 legs of the stool?
Okay, wow, there's a lot in that question. So, a lot of business owners are, like all of us, they're very distracted and abstract. They got a lot going on. And it's very hard for them to focus. And so, well, there's so much in my head that I want to talk about right now. But so what I find is that every business will transfer one way or another. And a lot of business owners don't want to face that. They basically want to kick it to the curb. They're almost like groundhogs. And this is Groundhog Month. And a lot of times they got their heads down, and then the weather starts to change. They stick their head up, and they're just reacting to the weather, and they put their head back down. And that's not going to work for getting a good price out of your business. And so the SEPA, what that does is that it really helps. And there's 2 tracks for selling the business. One is, as mentioned, there's actually 3 tracks, but one of them is the business owner himself whether or not he's ready, and the other is the business whether or not it is ready to sell. And so what the SEPA does is help us focus on that side of the track, get that person more ready to sell the business. And then a business broker comes in, and our job is to sell the business. The problem is that a lot of these sellers come to us and they're not ready to sell. And so we have to convince them of that, have to get through the emotions to help them focus on the things they can do in order to make their business more valuable. And so time, it can either be the business owner's ally or their enemy. And so if a business owner is ignoring this, time is their enemy, and time kills deals. And so it could be something as simple as when somebody wants to sell, and I bring a buyer to them, if that buyer turns around and asks for financials, which they always do, and it takes that seller 45 days to find their financials to get them together, that scares the buyers, and the price starts to drop and it starts to plummet exponentially. And so those little things that our job as a business broker is to help sell a business, but at the same time, our job also is to help them improve the value of the business and see the pros and cons and the back and forth. It is amazing to me when I go in to look at a business with a seller, and I'll come in, I'll walk in, sit down with them, I'll say, okay, you should take that bird's nest out of your sign out front. And like, bird's nest? What bird's nest? And so then I come back, I bring a buyer in, that bird's nest is still there. And then then the buyer says, well, hey, you got a bird's nest out front. And next time they come back, then suddenly that bird's nest is gone, because suddenly that seller begins to realize, hey, this is serious. There are actually people out there that are going to pay me for my business. And so there's a lot of these nuances as we're trying to figure out how do we reach the seller and get them to begin to take things seriously. So I liken this like a business like an airplane. And a lot of times for a business broker, people come to us when the engine's on fire and the altitude as fast as losing value. At that point in time, my hands are tied. There's not much I can do. I'm lucky helping Christ land without catching the plane on fire. But the trick for a business broker and for all of us is to figure out how to get in that cockpit where they're walled off and life is good. They follow their flight plan, they get up in the air, they look at the view, they're ecstatic, and they forget about where they're going, they forget about their flight plan, and they build a cockpit around themselves to keep them away from all the stuff they don't want to hear about. And so the best way for a business owner is really to open up that cockpit a little bit, let somebody in there that they know, like, and trust, to basically be like an angel on their shoulder saying, hey, just tweak this a little bit here, a little bit there, and make time your ally so that you're begin to build that business to where it's more ready to sell and you get a higher value out of it. So this whole thing is like a big game of pickup sticks. There's so many things in there. You move one thing, it moves another thing. And at the end of the day, it's really about the emotions and getting in there to that buyer the seller where we can get their attention. So
That's great. And it's a great analogy. No,
Sorry.
that's a great analogy. And now I'll hand it to Tom because it's a perfect segue. How are you going to stop the plane from burning and, and insulating them in the cockpit? So tell us what your spin on that. Thanks,
Right.
Gary. Thanks so much.
Sure. First, I want to say it's great to see everyone in the room. There are so many people here that are basically partners to business owners, whether they're on, an attorney, they're in wealth management, there are other advisors that, the SEPA program really helps you understand you need the right people at the table to advise that business owner. And so we're blessed here in the Cleveland community to have such a great and resilient community, very helpful. Be sure to network. There's a great set of people here in the room and on the panel to help you and your clients be successful.
Agree.
Relating to that kind of three leg of the stool, getting that business owner ready and the business ready are certainly two key things. And a key kind of metric that you can kind of use as to understand whether or not that business owner is ready and the business is ready is ask them, very simple question, how comfortable would you feel taking a 4 or 6 week vacation from your business? Is the business going to fall apart? Are they going to freak out? Do they even have governance processes, signature authority, all kinds of things for the business to continue while they're gone? And if none of that stuff is in place, and that they can handle it, and that they have trusted leadership in the business that can keep the business going, that business is not ready to exit. That owner is not ready to exit, and the business itself is not ready to exit. If they don't have, processes, procedures, governance, methodologies, kind of across the board, whether it's strategy, financial, operations, technology, processes in place, that business is not ready. And you need to look at it from each one of those perspectives to make sure that the business is ready to exit, to address that value gap so that they can maximize that exit and have a successful future in retirement or look for their next opportunity of business to buy.
Yep, absolutely. And so, anyone want to add on that? Yep,
Sure.
Sure.
I guess I'm supposed to be the one who's talking about the personal leg of the stool. I'm really not going to talk about the financial side of things, the personal financial side of things today. We only have so much time. I've changed my opinion about a lot of things in my industry over the course of the last decade. And one of them is that I'm actually supposed to be having the touchy-feely conversations with clients. I used to avoid that because I thought I could be the technical person who knew all the facts. ChatGPT is a lot better than that, so I've been usurped. But essentially, exit planning from my perspective is answering the question, what do you want? Or what do you really want? Because you're pretty good at lying to yourself as a business owner and thinking about your financial future. If you've ever built a home before, you could hire the best architect, the best builder, the best construction company in the city, and they're not just going to start building something. I'm certain they would build an aesthetically pleasing, structurally sound building for you, but the first thing that they're going to ask is, well, what do you want? What do you actually want this home to look like, your dream home? It's not dramatically different from a personal financial exit planning standpoint. There's no such thing as the perfect deal, whether it's a 100% cash at close third-party sale or a staged minority purchase from a private equity firm or seller finance note to an internal team. They're all going to have different pros and cons. It really means what that does for you. And I always ask owners as they're thinking about a sale, because nobody ever comes to me and says, I want to sell tomorrow. They always say, hey, I'm kicking the tires a little bit. What does this look like? One of the first questions I ask them is, what's the hidden job that your business is doing for you? Meaning, money aside, let's say you've got plenty of money already. What is your business doing for you that money can't buy? Community, status, those are really big things. Structure, a sense of authority. Start with those. Think of your top 1 or 2. Don't get crazy with it because you'll get off on a bunch of different tangents. But once you have that isolated and you're considering the different types of deals and exit strategies that you could implement, if that exit strategy comes into direct conflict with any of those things that you really get from your business, that's probably not the ideal strategy for you. If you're somebody who really wants to maintain control, an outright third-party sale, while it might be at a premium multiple, that might not check all of your boxes. So personal financial planning and exit planning has a lot to do with answering the question, what do you really want?
Yeah, and if, I did a deal with a buyer, a young buyer, 35 years old. He had a trust fund. He came to me, and we found him a company to acquire. Buyer and seller meet, and they liked each other. We're not going to step 2 unless there's rapport between buyer and seller. Step 2 is valuation. When it came to valuation, the buyer offered something that was too low for the seller, and the seller ghosted us for a month. Then the seller called us back a month later, and I said, why did you call us back? And now you want to come to that middle ground? And the business owner said, I met with my financial planner, and I know how much I need to close my wealth gap for retirement. So I thought to myself, and it closed, that deal closed. And I thought to myself, man, the financial planners really control a lot of my destiny. They really have a big role in helping the business owner figure out what they need from their business in the liquidity event to retire strongly. And so, I mean, but Jordan, do you find that you're doing a lot of that? People are asking you, let's talk about what I need to get out of this business, the exact dollar amount to meet my financial plan for my retirement. Does that really come into play?
Yeah, I mean, imagine the negotiating leverage or lack thereof that you have when you go to the table with a potential buyer if you've never gone through the personal financial planning to understand what your financial need actually is. Now, candidly, the most successful deals that I see are from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation owners who have diversified assets outside of the business already. Their financial plan, as it were, is already set. They've got plenty of money. They don't necessarily need the liquidity from this business to retire or to fund their kids' legacy, pay for college, that sort of thing. But I think what that really means is that the other components of a deal, the non-financial components of a deal, are just as important, if not more important, than the financials. But it's true, if you are a first generation, or let's say you do need the liquidity from this business to fund retirement or the next phase of your life, you don't know pretty darn sure what that number is, and you go to the negotiating table and you get an offer. Works both directions. First, you might get an offer that's super fair, and your business broker is saying, hey, this is really good, this is a premium multiple, you should take it. If you haven't gone through the exercise of understanding what your number, your net of tax number needs to be, and all the different mechanisms of how that deal can be structured, you might pass up a really good deal because you think you need more, and the opposite's true too. You might take a deal that you can't afford to take because you think your number is $5 million when your number is probably $10 million because you have these goals that you want to achieve. So it works both ways, but yes, to Jill's point, that's a super important component of what we're doing, the actual, what I call roll the sleeves up and figure out the numbers. I think that's the easy part. The hard part is working on the emotional side with the buyers and sellers to make sure that everybody is checking their boxes when they're at the table.
All right, and yeah. Please.
So one of my sellers, he was running ultra marathon, and we were talking, and he said something about the end of the race and how it varied. And I found out that on ultra marathon, these different larger races, the finish line could be anywhere from 3 to 5 miles difference. And I'm like, that's amazing. And if you go 26.2 miles for a marathon, you know exactly how it is. And people are down the last 100 meters, they're counting it down. And so it's really hard if you don't know how long that race is or how long you got to run. It's really hard to know how to focus and train for it. So that's really, really, really important.
Yeah, so the private capital markets will set the multiples for EBITDA or SDE. But if you get a company that comes to you and it's not profitable enough, or you're not gonna get the multiple you want, then you send them back out there or to someone like Tom to work on their company. And then SEPA teaches us, so I wanna hear from you, especially you. And, but SEPA teaches us, look, the tangible capital assets are the financials. Is it profitable revenue, and is there good EBITDA? Is there strong EBITDA and good margins for what product or service they sell? But what about the intangible capital assets? You've got human capital, customers, social, the brand, the infrastructure, structure. Everybody comes to us and says, we want to buy a business, no customer concentration, year-over-year growth, no owner dependency, automated infrastructure. They check mark.
I'd buy that business.
Right. So, but not every business is in perfect condition. What do you do? What do you tell them?
Wow, my head is spinning again. So, where do I start? I had so many different ideas when she was talking. So, a lot of it is about, again, getting back to understand the seller. So, in the Bible, it talks about how when somebody asks for a fish, you wouldn't give them a snake, you give them a fish. And so you don't give them a cookbook, you give them the fish they're looking for. So my job really is to sit there and listen very carefully to that seller and find out the pros and cons, what they're looking for. So in one case, I actually found a seller that signed an agreement buyer signed for $2 million to buy a business. And we started to work with them, and I realized that it wasn't going to work out very well for the seller. Too much time and effort because the buyer's kind of new to the industry. And so we actually backed off, and that seller ended up taking like $800,000 less from somebody else with more experience. So all those nuances is very difficult. We really have to help that person to understand what they're looking for. So.
Thanks, Gary.
I'm Ben Calkins. I founded Calkins Law Firm 10 years ago, but the idea of launching a business law boutique occurred to me decades earlier when one of my very first clients told me that I was the only attorney he had ever met who had done what he said, when he said, and for how much he said. When I heard that, I told myself that one day I would launch a law firm that would do what it said, when it said, and for how much it said, always. Why hire Calkins Law Firm? Quite simply, we offer highly educated, top-rated attorneys with vast expertise and deep experience on a cost-effective and responsive basis. Our secret sauce is that we truly serve and endeavor to delight all of our clients. Our commitment to our clients includes empathy, expertise, experience, and enthusiasm, along with unparalleled ethics. Calkins Law Firm, client-focused and results-driven.
So many businesses run with a tax minimization strategy. They are running so much of their family and expenses through the business. You end up looking at some of their financials, and it's like, wait, you have 4 family members with cars that you're all expensing through this? Or you've got a nephew in the stockroom, but you're paying him how much? These are all quality of earnings adjustments that you end up having to make as part of evaluation to calculate that EBITDA. And with a tax minimization strategy, your tax advisor is helping you say, what can I get away with? What can I actually run through the business and minimize my taxes? But that is not a great strategy to get your business ready for sale. You need to try and clean up your operation and show real profit. You might actually have to pay some taxes, but having a year or 2, preferably, of good financials will more than pay for itself in multiples on the exit of your business if you're able to show that it is really profitable and not have to do it all with adjustments after the fact as part of the financial analysis. In the data room, buyers. It's like, they'll look at all these adjustments. Some are very obvious, some are not. And you gotta convince them that it's believable, these adjustments. It's much better to have cleaner financials as part of that process.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what you need to go through. And so while you may have a tax advisor that you're working with today, a tax advisor also on the outcome of a transaction, like wealth management, is another very important person to have at the table, because whether you're gonna get 10 million for a business or 5 million, depending on the tax implications of how that deal is structured and how they're putting it perhaps into a trust or other things, can have significant tax implications, and maybe they'll actually get a lot more money because of the tax and wealth management strategy that you can build into that acquisition. You can get and keep a lot more of the money as part of the transaction. So actually a smaller dollar amount with the right tax strategy can actually be better than larger without having a good tax advisor at the table with you.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
So in life, you can have three focuses. You can have things done fast, right, or cheap. You can have two of those, but you can't have all three. And so our job is to help the seller really understand the pros and cons, the ups and downs. And so to Jill's point, talking about the asset value and everything, all that, if a deal takes anywhere from 6 months to a year or longer, the value, that price shifts on multiple fronts. It shifts on the paper, it shifts in the buyer's mind, it shifts in the seller's mind. So that tying all those together is really difficult, and that's where our job is. Ideally, a good broker is going to look at the business and help position it, and then go out and find a buyer who can't sleep without having that business, and that's when you get the best price. So yes, to Jill's point, we can base it on. So one of the first things I do is somebody says they want to sell my business, I go out and I look at the market, basically come back with a broker opinion of value and say, I generally think this is what the business can sell for. Now I got to figure out how to control the seller's expectations. Sometimes they say, I'm happy to sell it, I didn't think it was worth that much. Or they want way too much, which gets to the point of finding that value, what they have to have, and knowing where that end game is. And so all that's tied together.
Yeah, so we specialize in 5 to 50 million. We're lower middle market. Our deals are between 5 and 50 million, and I see recasting needing to be done in the smaller ones. I think
Yeah.
the bigger companies abuse that less. I don't know what, and I think that's a great question. I know there's a lot of CFOs or CPAs in the room. When do they start that? When do they stop running personal stuff through the business? Couple years out, 1 year out, 2 years out?
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Now, Jordan and I both ended up buying software programs that help value a company or analyze a company using 150 value factors. I bought a software subscription called Mouse, M-A-U-S, and Jordan ended up with one called Quist. If you're going to help a company owner look under the hood and evaluate their company, getting with an eye towards exiting, you're going to need to ask them some interview questions about how they're running the company, related to the employees, related to the customers, related to their structure, and related to their social intangible capital assets, and that's brand and things of that nature. Do you want to start, Jordan, and talk about how Quist has helped?
Sure. I addressed a little bit already, but wealth management for a business owner, if you're not managing that business asset as part of their portfolio, you're really not a wealth manager. Everybody in my industry says they work with business owners. Generally, business owners have a lot of money. That's a portfolio I'd love to manage, right? That's kind of what I've tried to insulate myself against. I plan on being in this industry for another 30 to 40 years, so the commoditization of investment management has guided my hand, and it's a blessing. Quist is a really interesting tool. It's a software interface that was developed by a professional valuation company specifically for people like me. I am not going to provide you with a tax IRS compliant valuation. I can't legally say that because it's not. You're not going to utilize this tool for gifting strategies, for marital divorce planning, for those sorts of things, but it's going to give you a working number that we can leverage in our financial plans for the future. I think what is another really interesting component of Quist specifically, and I'm not familiar with Mouse, so maybe they do this as well, but when I generate that output, it gives you a starting point. So it'll give you a range of values it uses private market multiples, real-time private market multiples. I think it's through deal stats. It'll look at a bunch of different intake questions from you. It'll look at the big three financial statements over a trailing period of time, and it'll spit out a range of value for your firm. And you either will be a little bit excited, a little bit disappointed, but it'll give you a working number. I think the coolest part though is then it's going to give you a list of like 20 different action items. And each one of those action items is going to have a dollar amount associated with it. So if your initial range of value is $13 to $15.5 million, you're going to get a list of 15, 20 different bullet points. If you address bullet point A, might be something as simple as drafting a true mission and vision statement with the help of your executive team and communicating that to your employees. That might be a $250,000 opportunity where if you address it, the enterprise value of your company can go up by $250,000. There's some really esoteric things that you could address that might add $1.1 or $1.8 million to the enterprise value of your business. I don't do those things specifically. That's where I would work with a Tom to say, hey, we've got the rough draft here, we've got the blueprint. Let's go to work and actually work on improving the value of this business as part of this client's financial plan.
Right. That's, Mouse does the same thing, 150 value factors, and we interview each owner. We just did one, and there were 4 owners. At the end, the 4 owners saw each other's answers. And one owner was CFO, one was head of ops and sales, one was head of IT because they had a proprietary logistics software. It was homegrown and they had to keep maintaining it. And the 4th guy was in ops. But they looked at each other's reports. The software delivers a report on where you might be falling short. It scores the company. And then we take the score and apply it to a formula to show them, in this current state, this is what your multiple of EBITDA would be. Not as good as it could be is if you take our report and make a few changes or go hire Tom. And so in doing that, you give them something to work on. And it also helps if there's multiple owners. In this case, the multiple owners said, well, why didn't we fix this problem? It could cost us a lot of money. And the other owner said, well, you told me I couldn't spend that money. So you're starting to now consult in your, I'm happy to give you that report because I want to be over here making matches, not fixing the world, which I know you're going to do. But you need to, we in the SEPA world, we couldn't just say, you know what, I think you'll get a 3X or a 5X. We needed something tangible. And the software that turns into actionable report has been a godsend for our business. And then we can hand it off to whoever becomes the quarterback of all the resources that these companies are going to need to prepare for an exit. Because let's talk about that. It's not just me or you selling it, me finding the buyer, Tom fixing it along the way, and Jordan doing all of it, including financial planning. It's got to be an estate planning professional. It's got to be lawyer, accountant, quality of earnings specialist. It's everybody that's getting this company ready, at least for lower middle market, 5 to 50 million. What kind of size deals do you do, Gary? I mean, this all applies to your stuff too, right?
Yes, of course. So a lot of times smaller businesses are sometimes they're small for a reason, and sometimes we have to work harder on a smaller business than on a bigger business because it's helping them establish those nerve synapses where these things flow and the information flows. So yes. So one of the key points I want to make in all this is there was an industry out there, I heard it several times in this industry, and that saying was, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. And I resented that because I thought that was very bureaucratic. And I think a lot of business owners see that way as well, because to a lot of them, the documentation, these advisors and things, they see us as overhead. And they resent having us come in there because they don't want to pay us because we're not really hitting the bottom line. So we had to get through that problem, but it's true because if you don't document, it doesn't happen. So some seller says, hey, I've got a great customer base. The buyer's going to say, well, great, show me the contracts. The seller says, hey, I've got some great employees, and the buyer's going to say, well, great, show me the non-disclosure agreements and their non-competes. The seller's going to say, hey, I've got some great intellectual property here, and the potential buyer's going to say, hey, well, great, show me the IP and the patent. And so for a business owner, if you're going to sell, that's why the sooner you bring Tom in and start documenting these things, getting those nerve synapses fired to where it's part of your overall process, the much better you're going to be. And so when that buyer says, hey, I'd like to see this, you can provide it, and just providing it fast gives that buyer a lot of comfort. It almost may not even matter what it says, but if they have to wait 3 weeks for it, it could be really good, but it doesn't look good because it took too long. And that's where Tom comes in, helping them do that before they get to me.
Yeah, Tom, talk about what value factors matter. Like, I think tech matters, like ERP, CRM. how are you doing stuff on the back of a napkin, you know?
Right, they all definitely matter.
Right.
And it really is kind of across the board, whether it's, strategy, financial, operations, technology. A lot of it comes down to institutional knowledge. And, I've been with the turnaround firm, Inglewood Associates, the last 10 years. We had a client, struggling family-owned business, had a number of family members in the business, and they were at risk of having to sell, actually being forced into receivership. They weren't there yet, but it's close. Spent a lot of time on site working with this client, understanding their processes and opportunities for improvement, both financial and operational. They were so proud that they had all of their family members rotate through different roles, and that was part of their development. Well, what documentation did you pass on from one person to the next? They didn't have any. It was a 100-year-old business. They didn't have any that they would pass. They had to learn by shadowing the other person for a week, and then they have to make it up. And they wondered why they were having trouble with scrap and process issues and all kinds of things. It actually was a mess. It was sad to see that a 100-year-old business did not have any documentation of institutional knowledge about how they manage their business. And if it came to a point where they needed to sell, what is a buyer buying?
Right.
Assets. There really was nothing there. And, I've had multiple careers at this point in my life. My gray hair shows it. One of my last 3 years roles at a company called TRW, some of us with gray hair familiar with that, was corporate knowledge manager and was really helping businesses, some of our operating units, document and implement Six Sigma and really, figure out how to improve the operation and enable, people resources to maximize really profitability in each one of those operating units.
Yeah.
And, kind of joke about, you mentioned the little bird's nest. It's communication and sometimes little things. And, even that one company said, well, how do people know where to go? Like, I'm walking around the plant and literally had an employee ask me, hey, where is line 7? Like, there's no
Nothing's
guide,
marked, no marked.
no markings, no guidance in the plant. How is a buyer potentially walking through this, or even their banker or other investor, when they walk through that facility, know how this operation works and communicate those things? I mean, it's all kinds of things can be very simple, but can make a material difference in how a business runs and how you can actually extract value out of it.
Yeah.
So,
My name is Wyndham Ratchford. I'm the owner of Creative Gold Media, a video production company here in Northeast Ohio. We help small and large clients tell powerful stories through video content. Having worked with organizations in diverse industries, we know there are numerous opportunities to utilize video for growth and branding. Our team has key insight that I'm confident will help reach target audiences you are trying to connect with. Are you open to chatting about some ways we can help with video? If so, please email a convenient time to chat and I will follow up with you. I appreciate you and your time.
quick story. When I was younger, we lived about maybe 400 yards from a train track. And I'm sitting there one time playing chess with somebody, and I'm focused on the game, and the guy said to me, the kids playing chess with said, hey, how do you stand that? And I'm like, stand what? He's like, that train going by right now. And so that's essentially what business owners do. They come in every day, they see the same thing, they put blinders on, they're doing a good job, they're making money. That's all they care about, and the stuff that's so obvious to somebody coming in from the outside, they just can't see.
Yeah. I did a deal with a guy who said, I saw dollar signs all over that place because it was such a mess. I knew I could come in and I could turn it around. And he did. I did a panel discussion with him in this very room, and he did. He tripled the business. But not everybody wants to step into a mess or has the wherewithal to turn that stuff around. A core team that'll stay. A couple things came to mind when you were talking. You know, the kiss of death is when a lot of people are going to retire with the owner. So I got to tell you, you know, because they all been together for 30 years.
Institutional knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, and then all your tribal knowledge walks out the door. And that's not a good scenario, but a core team that'll stay, documented processes, but, technology that runs the infrastructure, but really, anything that can increase top-line revenue or make revenue more profitable to increase bottom line is really where it's at. Or you can't place a multiple against nothing or something very small, even if it was a generous multiple. So driving top-line revenue or fixing your problems with profitability, I think it's the most important thing. So one of the questions we wanted to offer is, how does an owner unlock all its value prior to selling? What value factors matter? And can you share a story where you improved the value for one of your clients? Or they did it on their own, and then they came back to you in a year and said, now we're ready. And you're like, holy cow, you looked at things and things were they listened to you. They listened to you. Anybody want to start first? Here.
So for providing value, so I always look at it that a seller should get more on the back end than than they would by themselves, than what my fee was. And so example that I had I brought in a good match for a buyer, and incidentally I've sold 10% of my businesses by studying the seller and going out and finding one buyer and making that one introduction. And so that's the best way to do it. But anyway, so sort of the same situation. I brought in this buyer the seller really liked, and we had the meetings and everything. The seller came to me and says, hey, I really like this guy. Whatever he offers, I'll take it. So about 5 o'clock one day, I got the email from the buyer, and he offered a price, and it was about 10% less than what the seller wanted. And so I didn't send to the seller because I knew he wouldn't sleep that night. So I waited the next day. I went back to the buyer. I said, hey, here's your offer. I know what the seller wants, and that's just not it because, back up. I told him first, every buyer wants a happy seller, because if you try to nickel and dime them, they're not going to give you the keys to that safe deposit box or whatever that you need later on, whatever. So every buyer wants a happy seller, and vice versa. And then so I said, you want a happy seller. You're going to be working with this guy by the contract for 2 or 3 years. He's going to stay around, and so you want a happy seller. So I know what this guy wants, and that's not it. And that's all I said. And the next day he sent me an offer that was like 15-20% above what his other asking price was. And so that's kind of how we provide value.
Wow, excellent. So I was just going to say, we're going to open it up for questioning because we're getting close.
Yep.
But what do they mean when they say exit planning is just good business strategy? This author, Chris, drilled this into our heads ad nauseum. Exit planning is just good business strategy. Last comment from each of you, short, quick comment on what that means to you.
I'll bring it back to the software component and why it's part of our business model that we run every single year. We don't just have a client say, hey, I'm thinking about selling my business, and then I respond, let's use this software. It's part of our annual business model, and that's kind of because, and this is a little bit unfortunate, but a lot of business sales or transitions don't happen on the seller's timeline. Death, disability, divorce, those are real things that can cause a business to sell well before your expected timeline, meaning it needs to be sale ready, meaning it should just be your business planning, not your exit planning.
Absolutely.
Right. These other advisors and so many people in the room identify a number of things that need to be done or could be done to help maximize the value. And I had an opportunity to work with a client that was a little challenged. They were considering selling, and actually identified that they had an operating line that had real high labor content, and identified how it could be automated, reduce some of the labor content, and increase the profitability substantially of the business. They actually ended up deciding not to sell. So it happens both ways.
Yes.
But that's one of the great things. And with the advisors, whether it's here or in this room, you got to work with your clients, those business owners, to get them sale ready, whether they're ready to sell today or sometime in the future, that we can all work as a team, have the right advisors at the table, like the SEPA model, to really advise the client to maximize their future. So that's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom, thanks. So if I had one message for an advisor or for a business owner, and that is be intentional and build it to sell it. A lot of the sellers have these ideas in the back of their head that they can't talk about what they want to do with the business. They feel like if they tell their employees they're going to sell it, the employees are going to leave. They say, and believe me, if you have somebody who has a really good, valuable product, and the customer sees them, they can barely get out of the car to come in for a meeting, that customer is going to be very happy when that company says that they're looking for somebody to buy the company to keep it going in the future. And so I think there's a lot of business owners have a fear that if they make it public, that it will, and if they wait too long, they do it does become a big drop in expectations, cause a lot of problems. But if they say, hey, nobody lasts forever, this too shall pass, good times are going to change, at some point in time I'm going to have to sell this business, so let's design it now in order to get the best value possible, and by being intentional, that will make a huge difference.
And it has been my experience that the companies that are exit ready, they're using some kind of EOS. They're using either Vern Harnish, Scale Up, or they're using Gino Wickman, Traction. They are, I'll admit it, and I love those two methodologies. I would say that the deal Ben and I just did, that woman was so organized, that company was so ready for exit. Ben and I were like, no way does this exist. And it made it so nice for the buyer, and it was a shorter timeline to close. So nothing. And then Jordan, I love that you redo your analysis yearly because it is part of what is their business strategy. Good business strategy is measuring things, fixing things, recognizing problems, fixing them, remeasuring. If you can't measure it, if you don't manage it, how do you measure it, and vice versa? So, well, thank you for the panelists, and let's open it up to some questions. Kevin.
How, I realize this varies probably a lot, but a typical owner that comes to you, or maybe that you get introduced to that needs help with the exit planning, how long does that usually take? And what are some of the most obvious factors that influence how quickly or how slowly that process goes along?
Good question. Can I jump on that one
Sure.
to start?
Oh, yeah.
Because they'll talk about the actual business. I'm going to talk about the personal side because it's super important. We're going to have some version, I'm assuming, of early is better, early and often, and I'm going to echo that, but I want to put some teeth behind it. From a personal and financial planning standpoint, the toolbox that you have available to you gets smaller the closer you get to that actual transaction happening. So to put some numbers behind it, yes, if you want to implement something that makes you not super integral to the business as an owner, that's going to take some time, fantastic. I'm not going to talk about those. They're the experts on that. Things like qualified small business stock, if you want to have a taxless transaction, you need to look at your entity election, and that's going to be a 3 to 5 year window, where if you're past that window, you can still do the transaction, obviously, but you're going to pay taxes. You can't re-register as a C Corp, you can't qualify for small business stock. Certain irrevocable trust vehicles have look-back periods of up to 3 years for like irrevocable life insurance trusts. Those things need to be considered, which is why I like my ideal client is somebody I'm working with for many, many years before they're thinking about selling, because we're implementing all of these different things. Now, you're not completely up the creek without a paddle. If you haven't done any of those things and the transaction happens, you can do some things in the year of and immediately following the transaction, things like donor advised funds. You could even potentially get away with some sort of ESOP transaction in the year of, but early and often is best. I would say from my personal standpoint, 5 years if we want access to the entire toolbox from a personal financial planning standpoint.
Nice.
So Leon Danko was in the area for a while. He cut his teeth on his work with business owners back in the 80s and 90s. And he basically said that the business owner is like the king in his own kingdom. And it's true, because it's hard to say the emperor has no clothes, and the employer is not going to tell the business owner these things. And the people, he just doesn't want to hear it. So really the number one factor in all this is how coachable is a business owner and how open are they to advice and insight. At some point in time, if they wait too long, the die's been cast, there's not much you can do about it, and you're just left basically as an asset sale. And so the sooner they get to there, and if they're coachable, there's so much they can do to improve the value of that business. Oh, sorry.
This one.
So one, I want to mention, there's another organization in town called XBX. They actually had a meeting last night, Exit Planning Exchange. Great organization of a lot of the professionals that help businesses with their exit. And I was amused by last night, Molly Brown here is with that group. She had an LOI, she mentioned this story, LOI to close 5 days. How is that even possible? And from my perspective, kind of goes back to my here. It's, for me, how to make that happen, either from the buyer or the seller, it's competitive intelligence. To the extent either you as a seller know your business, know your customers, competitors, your technologies, your industry, and maybe participate in your industry association. You know, the Precision Manufacturing Association. You can get industry metrics. You participate in those industry surveys, and you can actually understand some of the profitability of your peers in the industry. If you get to know all that, you also know who the strategic buyers could be of your business. And you can help your business broker or the investment banker in that process. And likewise on the buy side, if you know that industry and know about the business, it can make a huge difference in LOI to close and have a successful transaction that works for everyone. So.
Tom, the other thing that came up last night with these two ladies on the panel was something that affects the turn time is whether you have a real M&A lawyer on both sides. So we were talking about how business owners try to use their divorce attorney for their business transaction, et cetera, and how that just really drags the process out if people don't know what they're doing. So that was something that we talked about last night too.
Amen.
So, quick story. I once had I got engaged for a business, and we got a letter of intent in 30 days. And so I called the seller up and said, went to the meeting, and I slid it to him and think he'd be all happy. And he says, well, that was too easy. I want to discount your commission. So we can't make it too easy because otherwise the hoarder gets it.
Yeah, I would say it really depends on the condition of the seller. We had one that the seller really needed a lot of hand-holding. Things like inventory was very confusing of how much was there. And yeah, it depends. It really depends. The cleanest thing I ever did was this deal with Ben. And I've been at it 15 years, and that still took 6 months. So it depends. And the makeup of the company, is it just a service business, or is it just straight P&L, cash for tax, or is it like complex, couple buildings, couple plants? It depends. I don't know how to answer that. It's all over the board for us. And some of them can be fast, but what is fast? When there's love. When the buyer and seller love each other, we're moving forward. They're dating, they're going right to marriage, and that's fast. But how they, deal with the prenup and all that is another thing.
We can have a few more questions.
Okay, a couple more questions.
So I have so one of the things in all these deals is it's like a roller coaster ride. So what Jill's is saying, 1 minute they love each other, and the next day they hate each other. And we really, there's so many times we're up late at night talking them down off the cliff so they don't jump off. So the personality management is great because, and the other thing is if the seller's not honest with us, and if we're not open with the buyer, when the buyer finds something we didn't tell him about it, then he thinks, what else are you hiding? So that relationship is absolutely huge.
Yeah, and I've never had people hate each other. I've had people bicker, the Bickersteins come out in them, and but I have had something die at the 1 yard line because of cold feet, and that's another thing this guy drilled into our head. Deals die because of cold feet. Back to bringing it full circle. I'm not going to sit home watching Entertainment Tonight every night. They didn't want to sell anyway. We approached them with the buyer, kind of, bum rushed them a little, and they weren't ready, and they had cold feet. That's why things stopped. But I haven't seen too many people hate each other, but they do bicker. They do bicker.
So I mentioned that deal where we had a letter of intent in 30 days. That was the good part. The bad part was it never closed. Because I said that seller came to me, he wanted to discount his commission. That's how he was as a person. We probably shouldn't have taken a listing. So he was so rough on everybody. And we got, the bank kind of, because of COVID, the bank kind of changed the final yard line on us. And the seller started to dicker. And the buyer was a super nice buyer. Finally, he's like, you know, this is just ridiculous. I sold my car collection. I took out this life insurance policy. I turned down a promotion, all these things to buy this business. And this guy's going to nickel and dime me at the end. I'm just out of here. And so that's the emotional up and down of selling a business.
Absolutely, lots of emotion, lots of emotion. Anything else before we close? It's just about 9. Oh, thank you.
Yes, so this
Aaron.
has been a great panel. Appreciate you guys. So just a big takeaway for me has been that importance of the proactiveness of the conversation for exit planning. So I think working with lower middle market companies, a lot of times I feel like they're kind of at a level where they're comfortable, they feel like things are going well, but then they get to the exit planning side, they find out what that number is, it's a lot different. And like you guys said, there's not a lot of time to make a change. They're kind of at the end point anyway, so how motivated they are. So appreciate you guys kind of shining a light on that.
Thanks, Aaron, our banker here. Anything else? All right, guys, it's a wrap. Thank you for your.
Thank you for your time.